Hello everyone, it's Friday, 5 March. And today in the show we have the Freight Director of Network Rail, Charleen Wallace, Maggie Simpson from the RailFreight Group, John Smith from GB RailFreight, and our own UK correspondent, Simon Walton. This is RailFreight Live. Hello everyone and welcome to this UK edition of RailFreight Live. Now, I'm very excited about today's show because it's not every day that we get to speak to the Freight Director of Network Rail. This is the UK's infrastructure manager. The UK has been through a lot. It has had the Brexit, strict lockdowns and of course the ongoing pandemic. But there have been positive developments too. And today we're going to speak to several people active in the field to discuss these developments. But first, we're going to look at another report of our UK correspondent. Most historians agree that the railways played a huge part in making the Industrial Revolution. With Britain at the heart of that sweeping change to society, it's no surprise that the British also lay claim to the invention of the modern railways. Being first, though, does not always mean being best. And as Stuart Cameron reports, Britain is now spending big money to reinvent the railways and make them fit for the 21st century.
Ask any British school pupil and they'll tell you that the first steam railway in Britain was the Stockton and Darlington in 1825. What those teachers' pets may not tell you is that it was 8 years before passengers were afforded the luxury of a locomotive. Britain's railways were built with freight in mind, and even though passenger services have grown up to dominate the working timetable, freight is still with us and seeing something of a resurgence on the rails. While the pandemic has slashed passenger numbers, freight traffic has held up and even grown. The capacity freed up by curtailed passenger timetable has allowed freight to flourish, and there's a new perspective on the priorities for future development, which have freight in mind from the remote north of Scotland to the heart of London.
London Container Terminals is part of the Port of Tilbury, the biggest port on the River Thames, spanning 1,100 acres. So we have our own rail terminal here that has a daily service handling everyday products that get distributed throughout the UK to the Midlands, to Wales and as far as Scotland. Products then come back on the same trains, British products that are then distributed throughout the rest of the UK and indeed exported globally. An important part of being able to offer a rail service is the fact that rail is only 25% of the carbon emissions of the road equivalent, and it also helps with congestion on the road networks too. The great thing about HS2 is that it will offer more slots for freight because it will take the fastest trains off of the existing network onto the new rail line. So that will mean that we can offer those slots to our customers. It will also mean that for passengers there will be more capacity for more services. So it means that everyone will benefit even if they're not using the HS2 service.
Britain has never been a nation to abandon its past, even in the white-hot heat of the technological 1960s. Britain was still building steam locomotives at the same time as the wires were going up on the West Coast Main Line. Integrating the past into Britain's future is in the national psyche. The high-speed rail project, HS2, may well embrace the most modern aspects of railway development, but it will integrate with the existing railway network, connecting first with the West Coast Main Line at Crewe. Maintaining Britain's network not only means the highest technology, but also heritage structures dating back to the very beginning of industrialisation. Keeping the network in running order is a challenge that Network Rail is charged with meeting. That often means dealing with structures and earthworks that are over 150 years old and sensitive parts of the national heritage. Britain's trading heritage depends on adapting historic dockyards like Southampton, recently upgraded to handle the longest intermodal trains, and developing facilities at purpose-built locations like Felixstowe, where capacity is catching up with demand, and the imperative is to be ready to cope with the modal shift to rail. Among many other projects, Network Rail has been working on that case for some time.
The Port of Felixstowe has been a huge success story for UK PLC, and as part of that, we need to increase capacity to meet demand from container traffic. Freight boosts the economy by up to £1.7 billion a year, and that's why we're investing in the Felixstowe Capacity Enhancement Scheme.
Inevitably, Brexit has changed trading expectations. Transit restrictions in Kent and paperwork to cross the UK land bridge have persuaded some hauliers and ferry operators to move operations away from the Channel. That's putting pressure on ports around the west and north and bringing rail facilities into focus. Bristol and Liverpool are ports on the up. So too are the northeast ports like Middlesbrough, the original terminus of the Stockton and Darlington. A case of history repeating itself or a bright new future for British rail freight? Time will tell. Stuart Cameron for RailFreight Live.
Yes, and on the line with us is Charleen Wallace, Freight Director of Network Rail. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me today.
It's good to have you. You are not only the Director of Freight, you told me yesterday. You have a broad portfolio. Can you explain a little bit more about what your responsibilities are?
My current job title is Freight National Passenger Operators and Customer Experience Director for Network Rail. And that includes looking after all the freight responsibilities that we're here to talk about today. The national passenger operators are the operators like Cross Country and Caledonian Sleeper. We look after aspirant open access operations as well, and charters. And we also have the Customer Information Strategy, which is an ORR directive from, it works with the Network Rail, train operating companies, RDG, and I also have the kind of network-wide managed stations portfolio for Network Rail as well. Not the operational side of things, that's part of the routes and regions.
Yeah, sounds like a huge job. I can only imagine that it's hard to represent all, and freight has always been a little bit in the shadow of passenger traffic. How do you make sure that freight is represented well?
I think for us, Network Rail would put their hands up to say that we haven't represented freight probably as well as we should have. We addressed that with the Putting Passengers First campaign, and we added in freight users, much to the delight of our freight community. Certainly from my point of view, my role covers all aspects of customer. So customer for me isn't just about passengers, it's about our freight community, it's about our end users, it's about everybody who uses the rail industry. And it's a great opportunity for me to actually bring freight to the table within a lot of the forums that it wouldn't necessarily have been addressed at before.
Yeah, and is it more difficult to represent freight towards the government as well, compared to passengers?
Not necessarily at the moment, because obviously I know passenger services haven't returned to pre-COVID levels yet. We're not anticipating that anytime soon, and I think it's a massive opportunity for us at the moment to actually look at every opportunity we can for freight. Certainly I know a lot of the operators are looking at like logistics, like freight options, and looking at different ways of travelling. People may not go back to commuting the way they did before, so passenger services that are running may not be full. I think it's looking at staycations. People are travelling to different destinations. I think the industry is changing, and freight has certainly got an opportunity. In every crisis there's an opportunity, but I think over the last year freight has been buoyant. The market's been really good for us, and certainly there's a lot of people who are very interested in freight now, who maybe were thinking very much passenger first and foremost.
Yeah. Now, there's has been a couple of announcements lately. There has been the East Coast upgrade and the Felixstowe and alley capacity enhancements. How much is this of this is driven by freight demand?
Well, I mean, I'm glad they've made the headlines because they're all very significant. In a freight context, with all the kind of growth forecasts that we've had, indicating that up to 60 freight trains per day could be needed in each direction to serve the port of Felixstowe, it's better news for us. It's logical that the demands of such location will support business cases for work at locations such as Ely. In fact, benefits from the Ely capacity scheme are primarily freight related, as much as by 80%. So because it links into the UK's #1 deep sea port at Felixstowe, so that nation's distribution heartlands at the key locations and the most significant growth artery for any freight in the country. And with the future of rail freight growth expected to see high percentage of new business for ports such as Felixstowe and Southampton, which has also recently been upgraded to allow for longer freight trains, any future programme with connectivity to major ports for freight generating locations will be key to encouraging modal shift and delivering much needed carbon reduction. As for the East Coast, which is another key corridor for rail freight, we're operating close to full capacity, and again the forecasts show it's expected to grow even more. And the good news here is that the introduction of digital signalling can provide additional capacity here, which could be used to run even more freight trains on and improve the performance. And at last but not least, the Wirrington Dive Under, which will support growth of freight to and from Felixstowe, Yorkshire and the North East by not having to cross that grade north of Peterborough where capacity is at a pinch. I think it's really good news for us.
Yeah. Another piece of good news may have been the SPEED project, which is supposed to speed up railway enhancements. What does that mean for the freight industry?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a month ago it was announced. So Project Speed is all about taking time and, I dare say, unnecessary processes out of the enhancement schemes. It's about building back better but quicker too, because Network Rail have addressed that we need to be more agile in our response to things. So if we can apply this to freight, it's a win-win. As well as reducing time, it will also reduce cost. And I think it's a testament to Project Speed that the Prime Minister gave a presentation at an industry conference last week. And he made it very, very clear that he has a massive confidence in our industry and the role that we play in supporting our economic recovery.
Yeah. And how do you look at the HS2 project? Is that something actually good for freight as they claim, or is that something to be debated?
Well, I'm going to be a little bit more formal here. So in line with the Department for Transport strategic case for HS2, once HS2 services from Euston are introduced, replacing most of our long-distance services through the northwest and central area of England, this allows the industry a choice to how to utilise the resulting released capacity for the services. North of Crewe, the arrangements for Phase 2 show us there's a capacity for more efficient freight, and that will include growth going forward. The arrangements for Phase 2B haven't really been confirmed yet, and that's subject to review by our IRP, commissioned by the government. We expect there will be some capacity for more efficient freight paths, and the arrangements will be set out by the HS2 Phase 2 hybrid bill, and that's currently expected at some point later this year.
Yeah. Okay, a lot of good is coming. You actually didn't start your job at this position a long time ago. It was right when the pandemic started. How has this been for you?
It was a bit of a baptism of fire, actually, because I started with Network Rail 2 weeks before the COVID crisis kicked in. So for me, my background has been predominantly transport. I worked within train operating companies in operations and also within aviation. So when I came into Network Rail, I had experience of the other side of the fence. And I knew quite a lot of people already who had come in from different backgrounds. But certainly the reason I came in to join Network Rail was because at that point, Andrew Haynes had been talking about putting passengers and freight users first. And I really saw it as a point where we were going to have this new culture change. And then obviously the COVID crisis happened. But it was good for me because initially I was put on the COVID response for Network Rail for the UK, and that included a lot of the kind of freight logistics side of the business, which was fantastic for me. And it's been great to see that freight has moved so many essential items and kept the country going, throughout the pandemic. So yeah, it was probably not the way I would have anticipated starting a new company, but it's been an absolute joy and a good learning curve.
Yeah. And how is it to work as a woman in rail freight? Because it's an industry dominated by men, but you are in a good position as a woman. How is that?
Yeah, I think there are more women now coming into freight, and I really encourage that. Certainly, I've been on a variety of different conferences, and they have asked me very similar questions. When I started in the rail industry, all those years ago, I was probably one of the few women at that point as well. So it's not the first time this has happened. We did see a bit of it, at one point there was quite a lot of women, and then all of a sudden it died off again. But I think the more we encourage people and explain what our jobs are about and how much we can make a difference, and actually we have got the skill set and the capacity to be able to do that, in any job within the rail industry, then I think more people will come on board. I mean, we've got fantastic women drivers, who are in the freight industry now, and they've been out championing the cause for everybody as well. So no, it's a privilege to be part of the freight community. It's a great place to be, and hope I can make a difference actually as well.
Yeah. And do you think you do things differently than a man in your position would do?
I think within my own skill set, because of my background, I maybe look at things differently. I haven't been in the one job for, forever. I've been in different aspects of the rail industry and transport. I can see things from a very commercial point of view. I try to be as innovative as I can be and look about, finding solutions rather than problems. So, yeah, I'm trying to encourage my team to do the same with that as well.
Yeah. Now, one last question for us alone. What is the biggest challenge in front of you for Network Rail, in your opinion?
I think at the moment, the whole rail industry is changing. We need to have a voice in whatever happens next. I mean, we're all waiting patiently for a white paper to come our way. And certainly within our team, we're keeping close to the team who are working with the DFT and the reform team to make sure that we do have a voice for the future, that Network Rail are working really closely with our regions at the moment to make sure that although it's a devolved network, we are still seen as a network-wide provider. And we want to make sure that, we are putting customers and our freight users and the community, end users first. So it is a challenge in current times, but I think, we have to kind of stop looking rearview mirror and keep focusing on the future. And we've got lots of really, really good opportunities for freight at the moment. So just being part of that, I think, is the key, and keeping on top of it and making sure it's relevant.
Yeah. Okay. Now we have some other guests who are joining us. We have Maggie Simpson from the RailFreight group. Maggie, are you with us?
I certainly am. Pleasure to be here.
Welcome. And we also have Simon Walton on the line with us. Simon, welcome.
Hello there.
You are our UK correspondent. And we are still missing John Smith. He is from GB RailFreight, but he is held up in meetings at the moment. So with a little bit of luck.
I think we have the wrong kind of digits on the line, and it's delaying John's joining us, unfortunately. And he's keen to get in on the conversation. I think anyone that knows John will know that he's always keen to get in on the conversation.
Okay, now we'll see later. Maggie, when I talked to you yesterday and I asked you what would you like to ask Charleen, you mentioned something about the de-regionalization actually of RailFreight. And this is something that you had an opinion on. Maybe you can share it with us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, I think it's been brilliant to see Charleen come in at Network Rail and bring some real focus into the freight team and their activities there. And, it's early days, but we're all already getting used to working with Charleen, and it's been really rewarding so far. But I think, as she alluded to a moment ago, Network Rail's been undergoing a lot of change with more devolution out to the 5 regions. And like all changes, there are risks and opportunities that are associated with that. And I frequently comment that if you're shipping some goods from China to Birmingham, you really don't care where the route director's boundary is, somewhere between Birmingham and Felixstowe. It's totally irrelevant to you. And I think the challenge for Network Rail is how to bring about the benefits that could come from a more locally accountable structure, but maintaining that national network perspective for people such as RailFreight and indeed the customers on passenger trains that also go right across the network. And I think it's an open point for all of us as to whether that balance is right yet, and understanding, well, if this is the balance, how do we make it work the most effectively when we know that things need to be really joined up if we're going to be efficient on the network. and I don't think it'll be a surprise to Charlie that we're asking this question, because I think it's at the core of what needs to be worked on next.
Charlie, maybe you'd like to give a response to that. What is this balance right now, and is this the right balance?
I think Maggie's absolutely spot on. We are going through a massive change. For those who don't know, we have 5 regions within Network Rail. So regions, I will use loosely, because Scotland and Wales are counted as a region from a Network Rail point of view, because we have a regional managing director, but we are more than aware that they are countries in their own right and are treated very much like that. And I think that is a valid point from Maggie, because if you are a network-wide operator and you are travelling through 5 different regions, you don't want an inconsistent response from Network Rail. You want a certain level of consistency. And that's not to take away from devolution at its best, because we support devolution to say, you know what, if you can have local relationships and you have local challenges that you have to face or work through, absolutely brilliant. However, there has to be this guide in mind in the background to make sure that all the operators and freight users and end users have got some level of a standard that they expect from a customer point of view. However, I think also it's for us to recognise within Network Rail we probably have a gap, and I know that Maggie has been a great mentor to me since I started in this role, as has John Smith, to be fair. And they've given me some guidance on what we could do better. What would our customers expect from us now? And actually, as part of that, we are setting up some regional hubs where we will bring our regions and our internal teams together. But we will also invite some trusted advisors like Maggie and John and some other people from the freight community, potentially some people from ORR, DFT, RDG as well, and have that open, transparent discussion. Because I think too often and not, Network Rail have been very good at moving 100 steps forward with the freight community. Then certain curveballs will come in from a regional level and it kind of sets us back. So my kind of aim for this at the moment is for us to be as transparent as we can be. And I know collaboration has been overly used throughout the pandemic, but I certainly think that collaborative, supportive recognition from the routes and regions that we are there to give them that guidance, but also to work very much with customers so that they can get the best experience from Network Rail.
Yeah. Now, something that may have come across these discussions has also been Brexit. I think you've been through a lot the last few months. Simon, can you tell us what the most credible impact has been of Brexit on RailFreight?
Yes, certainly. It's basically down to administration. There's a lot of paperwork that's been involved in implementing the UK's exit from the EU and keeping trade moving. I don't think things have worked out quite as badly, quite as pessimistically as some of us have said. There haven't as yet been the huge delays, but there have been considerable problems, particularly for traders, and that means that it's been more difficult for them to get their goods with the right paperwork in order to get them actually onto trains, to get them across the channel. There hasn't been the vast queues of trucks trying to get through the Channel Tunnel, but there has definitely been some disruption to the supply chain in the UK, and in some parts of the UK, particularly in Northern Ireland, some supermarket shelves have been bare. But I think from RailFreight's point of view, things have been moving quite well, perhaps with a different emphasis. If you recall, in Stuart's preamble to this piece, he was mentioning ports like Bristol and Liverpool, which have seen more traffic as traders have moved away from the Channel ports in order to avoid the potential for delay there. And as was announced just a couple of days ago in the Chancellor's budget, the free ports that have been established in the UK, 8 new free ports, and these do include ports in the northeast of of England and the south of England, away from the congested area of the southeast. Although I should note that Thames is one of the free ports, and that will include Tilbury, which we saw earlier in Stuart's report. So from a rail freight point of view, I think perhaps Brexit means maybe a shift of emphasis to different locations, but it's the same goods that are going through. Charlie mentioned earlier something which is of interest and I think will be more important, and perhaps it's a result of Brexit, in the growth of light logistics. And this is something which will cut across both freight and into the traditional passenger network, because light logistics being carried by either adapted passenger trains or indeed on passenger trains. I guess, Charlie, this means that there's more interface between you and your passenger-centric colleagues in Network Rail in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one benefit of having worked for a variety of different train operating companies is I have a network of people that I know exceptionally well. So I know that has become part of their radar. I hear the phrase "freight is great" quite often now, which I think is fantastic that people are focusing on that. And certainly from an internal Network Rail point of view, Maggie's heard me say this before, Andrew Haynes has had us focus on business development for freight opportunities that could bring in revenue, because obviously, passengers aren't, back in any way, shape or form. And I don't think it will be before September, really, before we actually see people travelling again. So I know some of my train operating company colleagues are looking at the options available to them. And certainly within Network Rail, we are speaking to some of the companies who have started to explore that opportunity already. And I'm sure there will be some pilots probably at the end of the year and some activity around showcasing events, etc., that we'll be able to inform you on a little bit more.
Yeah, well, indeed, Charlie, we've just reported on RailFreight.com with the collaboration between the established Intercity Rail Freight, a company which specialises in premium light logistics, and cross-country rail, cross-country trains, one of those passenger train operators that you're familiar with. And they're going to be, their particular collaboration is delivering medical supplies around the country in support of the vaccination programme for the pandemic. Again, new avenues that are being explored by the freight operators.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something else we need to look at as well is freight estate. That's certainly high on my radar as well. So I know the team are very much focused on looking at both of these. But yeah, there's lots of different things being explored at the moment, and I think it'll be quite exciting times ahead actually for all of us. It's a new. They're working very closely actually as a team for my own team, because I have the managed stations portfolio. So we're trying to work together to establish, better grounds for future, so that if somebody actually wants to do a showcase event in Glasgow Central, as an example, they'll have all the logistics already at hand, and they're working with that team. Plus, we've also got dedicated staff now that are looking at, business development opportunities for light freight and light logistics as well.
Yeah, I'd like to ask one question to Maggie as well. Maggie, do you recognize this positive vibe when it comes to Brexit and the impact it has had on freight?
Yeah, I mean, my personal view is that we shouldn't have done Brexit to ourselves, but we have. Perhaps that's ancient history, and Simon reflects there hasn't been a lot of disruption, and that's brilliant. Across mode, but of course, a lot of the customs paperwork doesn't actually go live till the summer. So I think colleagues of mine in ports and in other modes are watching carefully how that plays out as some of those additional checks which have been suspended until now go live. But from a rail freight point of view, as Simon's right, what we've been seeing really for the last 12 months or so is people diversifying their supply chains. So we know that, cross-modally supply chains logistics is very resilient, it's very flexible, it's faced up to pretty much everything that the last 12 months has thrown at it. And apart from a few wobbles, the shelves have been full, deliveries have been getting through, and that's a triumph of the sector. But actually, behind the scenes, people are thinking we need to be a bit more resilient. We need to build in a bit less lean, arguably, a bit more warehousing, and a bit more diversity in those trade routes that we use. So I don't suppose there are any businesses who are wholly walking away from roll-on, roll-off HGV traffic, but they're also looking at unaccompanied roll-on, unaccompanied lorry trade, and increasingly at lift-on, lift-off.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the shipping routes, therefore, between Northern Europe and the UK on the East Coast ports get busy. We're seeing shipping routes diverting from some of the bigger ports round to places like Bristol and particularly into Liverpool. And that's all bringing volume at a scale where rail can work. And that's why we've seen services coming out from T-Sport up to Scotland, from Liverpool up to Scotland, and Liverpool now down into the East Midlands as well. Of course, terminals like iPort at Doncaster, East Midlands Gateway, which I know you've covered on RailFreight.com, also seeing really significant volume growth. And so that isn't only about Brexit. Brexit's part of that. It's also about decarbonisation and people's ambition to have sustainable supply chains and to make more use of low carbon modes, which are rail and water. So that's all been really positive. And in fact, yesterday we saw the official statistics come out for the 3 months up to Christmas, which, as you'll recall, was the period of significant port congestion where we suffered badly in terms of the ability to load trains fully. It also covered the second UK lockdown. And yet, despite that, rail freight grew by 2% on the year before. So that's a tremendous result to have achieved growth despite all of that was going on, and indeed in the run-up to Brexit. And that gives me a huge confidence that our customers are pleased with the product that they're getting, that they're wanting more, and actually that they're telling their colleagues about that and bringing other businesses onto rail as well.
Well, I'm very glad to hear all these positive vibes. I would like to thank all of you very much for joining us today, and we'll definitely have a UK special again.
We'd welcome that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. That means we've already reached the end of the show. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel because you'll get updates every time we have new content. And in the meantime, you can watch the show again on our YouTube channel. Now, goodbye and see you next week.
En ook u kunt hier zitten, want deze coronaproof studio is te huur voor uw congres, vergadering of webinar. We hebben alle techniek in huis om u hierbij te helpen. Kijk voor meer informatie op promedia.nl. Ik zie u graag in onze studio.